So this is the second part of a series that we've titled Trading Best. And last weekend, Pastor Doug, I mean, if you heard this, the first sort of, 2 or 3 minutes of the sermon, he did an incredible job of setting up the concept of trading best. What do we mean by that? So I put a quote right from the beginning of his sermon, and it's up here on your screens. He said this: being the best employer, the best student, having the best marriage, being the best parent, or having the best career puts us on the merry-go-round of best. But it is far from a place of joy on that playground. Whatever best is, it isn't easily achievable, sustainable, or definable. Show me someone who is the best at anything, he said, and I'll show you someone who most likely lacks happiness and peace. And then I love this where he landed this. Best consumes the 18-year-old valedictorian as much as the 52-year-old CEO. No matter our demographic, best. It fuels our addictions and our affairs, our dysfunctions and our disappointments, our anxieties and our ambitions. See, this merry-go-round of best, it's merciless. It comes with crushing comparisons, exhausting expectations, and ceaseless striving. And some of us, we've fallen off that merry-go-round, or we've been hurled off of that merry-go-round of best. And it's left us with some scars or some wounds. Some of us, we're still on that merry-go-round, but truth be told, it is going so fast that we do not even know how to get it to stop. And we're getting sick. And Doug closed his setup to this series by saying, the merry-go-round of best is not God's best for us. So what would it look like to trade best for healthy? So today, I want to apply that same overview to this topic of marriage. Instead of best marriage, shouldn't we be striving for healthy marriage? Biblically balanced marriage. Because just to be frank with everybody, best marriage sounds absolutely exhausting to me, right? Because truth be told, my marriage is never going to be the best marriage ever, because that would require me being responsible for at least half of that, right? So if I can get real, do I have permission to get really real with you for a moment? Shake your heads. Do I have permission to get really real with you for a moment around this topic of me in marriage? Let me be frank. I'm a caveman when it comes to this. That's it. That's who I am. I am simply not capable of best in this area. I can't fix anything. I can't cook anything. My response to my daughters when they don't feel well is still, have you tried going to the bathroom, right? In 28 years of marriage, and I still can't read my wife whether or not she's in the mood, so I continually err on the side of, well, let's find out. I still don't understand why it's my responsibility to put down the toilet, put up the toilet seat, right? I think I'm going above and beyond just by picking it up to start with, right? I think it's perfectly acceptable to eat food in bed. I won't change my washcloth in the shower for weeks if she doesn't. I love going to the refrigerator, opening it up with a fork, and just sampling things till I find something I like. Some of you are like, oh, you probably come in here and you're like, oh, Pastor Scott, look at him up there preaching. I bet he's a wonderful husband. No, I'm not. One thing I thank God for about my wife, Tina, is that she's a very quiet and private person, because if she was a chatterbox, you all would be aghast at my husband's skills. What about you? Come on. We're not capable of best in this area. We're not capable. Now, if you're single here today, please don't check out on me, okay? Because this sermon is going to have a couple different parts to it. And the first one, I want to take a look at some myths about marriage. And I actually want to blow them up. And that'll apply whether you're single or whether you're married. And these are important for everyone. And then I want to shift, and I want to talk about some things that are a lot more practical. And whether you're single or not, or whether you are married, about putting these practical things into place. Most of what I'm going to share is from my 28 years of marriage, a few books that I'm going to recommend, Our Marriage Matters curriculum or material here at the church, and then 3 keys for a life-giving marriage. I heard this from Pastor Craig Rochelle at Life Church. I probably heard it 2 years or so ago at a conference that I listened to, and I'm going to share those with you. And then lastly, just my prayer time about this topic, because truth is there is an abundance of really great material out there on healthy marriage. And what I'm going to discuss here today is not the end-all, be-all. It's just simply where I've landed in my prayer time and what I've been led to share with you. Ephesians 5:31, a familiar verse is about marriage. It says this: "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. And then listen to this. This is sort of simple. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and then let the wife see that she respects her husband. I mean, that seems simple enough, doesn't it? When it comes to this concept of healthy, biblical, balanced marriage, that scripture makes it seem sort of simple. Leave your mother and father and start a new family. Men, love your wives as if they were yourself. Women, respect your husband. So why do we hear experts and why do we see surveys that say things like 50% of marriages end in divorce? Why do we hear things like that the divorce rate is the same whether you're a Christian or a non-Christian? There's virtually no difference. That's what we hear from surveys and experts. Experts and surveys tell us that most marriages, one or both of the people, they're unhappy. See, if you're single and you hear something like that, isn't that somewhat discouraging? You know, don't you sort of think to yourself, how can I assure that my first marriage will be my only marriage? I mean, if 50% do end in divorce, then why not just live together and avoid the pain and the misery of a divorce? And if you're married, and let's say you're going through a really difficult time, you've got to be wondering in the back of your mind, okay, maybe we're just part of the 1 out of the 2 that crash and burn. Oh, well, we tried. But I guess that we're just in the 50% that didn't make it. See, in some of my reading, as I dug in this from marriage about Christian sources and also secular sources, I came across this one concept over and over again. And I summed it up in this sentence. One of the key factors that is identified by social researchers as to whether a marriage succeeds or fails is whether the couple has a sense of hope or a sense of futility. See, there are many factors that could lead to a marriage breakdown. But if a couple believes we're going to make it, it is a completely different deal when they think that they're not. See, if a couple is struggling and all they hear is that 50% ends in divorce anyhow, then in the back of their mind, they've got to be thinking to themselves, hey, you know, if this ship, if it's likely to sink anyhow, then why bother working so hard? And the sense of futility actually self-kills marriage. In our culture today, there is a wide sense of futility. So often everything we hear is that marriage is in deep trouble. So about 6 months ago, I read a book, and here's a picture of it. It's in your notes, too, if you want to pick it up. It's called The Good News About Marriage, based on 8 years of research by Shanti Feldhahn. Her research team, shockingly revealed something, that in America, we've never reached 50% divorce rate. Never. The research indicates that it's been misunderstood because it was based on projections. Now, folks, grab this, but it's all in the book, and I put the website on your thing too, and you can go look at this, reams and reams of research if you want to dig in. But here it is in a nutshell. In the 1970s, no-fault divorce became legal, and suddenly people could get divorced just because they wanted to. They no longer had to convince a judge, and divorce skyrocketed, right? And sociologists and demographers, they started to say, if this keeps up, that somewhere in the next 10 years, it's going to go past 50%. Well, it turns out that the divorce rate peaked in 1980. And since then, it's been coming down. In fact, it has come down more than 30% since then. And Shanti and her team of researchers continually find, though, that sociologists making statements based on those earlier projections. And even though there are certain high-risk groups that are hitting nearly 50%, like baby boomers, for example, nowhere have we gotten close to that as a societal average. So here are some basic facts that are in her research that she unearthed about the current state of marriage. Stay with me here, and I'll track with this. According to the Census Bureau, so this is not some little sideline study, this is the Census Bureau, 71% of people are currently married to their first spouse. And that other portion, that 29%, some of those are made up from people that were married for a spouse for many, many years, and one of the husband or wife died. The Census Bureau says that the widowhood rate is about 9%. So, in reality, the divorce rate is really around 20%, not 50%. And let me just pause for a minute. That's nothing to do cartwheels about, right? I mean, 1 out of 5 is still not good. But could you imagine with me for a moment, if you're a young couple and you're thinking about getting married, and the marriage myth of 50% ending in divorce, as you're thinking to yourself, okay, you know, if we're going to do this, then we're going to have to work really hard at this to beat the odds. And if you're married and something starts going wrong, like, oh man, we might as well give up. Half of the other people didn't make it. Why do we think we will? Well, that 50% is based on projections from 35 years ago. And 20% is the reality. Imagine the difference. When I found this out, when I could sit with a couple that I'm going to do their wedding, or a couple that's going through a difficulty, and I say, you know, you might hit a difficult moment, but you're going to get through it. Because 80% of folks do. Imagine if you could sit right now with your spouse. Maybe you're going through a challenging time. And you can say, we can get through this. Because most couples do. And I'm confident that we can too. That's a marriage myth. And the second big marriage myth is that the divorce rate is the same among people in the church as it is among people that don't believe. I've heard this. Have you heard this? In fact, I think I've said it up here because I've heard it. It just seems so standard, you know, within a few percentages or something like that. See, this is based on a massive George Barna study that was done many years ago. And again, it's a myth and a giant misunderstanding because, see, Barna never studied people in the church. That was not the intention of this massive George Barna study. What he was studying was belief systems in America. On his study, you simply checked a box: Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, or other. So those that checked Christian on that survey did indeed have about the same divorce rate as those that were not believers. The box checked Christian did not, though, take into account whether you were living this out. Well, whether you were, pursuing your faith, whether you were involved in a church community. It just basically said, yeah, I believe in God. And Shanti, what she did was she went back and she partnered with the George Barna group and reran the entire study, including one additional question that was at the back of the survey. And that question was this: were you in church last week? So she reran the study with that. And I just want a quick pause here, because I believe there is a big difference than saying, yeah, I believe in God, than I believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And I'm pursuing him with my heart. And I'm in church. I'm in community as I go along in my faith. So the people that were in church last week versus those that were not, their divorce rate dropped by 27%. See, other studies that she reveals in this book, that if you're active in church, you're praying at home, you're in a home group, you're serving in church, your rate of divorce can actually drop 30 to 50% than someone that is not. I just want to say this out loud. Church matters to your marriage or your future marriage. Listen, there is one sort of main reason why people come to church, at least in the beginning. It's that they hope that their life will get better. Right? You know, period. I have known that it's not my preaching, right, for many, many years. People come with the hope that their life will be better by being here. And for years, married couples have been told that the divorce rate is the same in church it is for those that aren't here. So why bother coming? This blows that myth up. Church matters to your marriage. And the third myth is that most marriages, one or both of the couple are unhappy. And I won't dig too deep into this one, but her massive 8-year study, she had this one survey with this simple question, and you can see it on your screens. People are happy in marriage. That is a myth. Most people are happily married. 80% of first-time marriages are still intact. And if you are active in your faith, that percentage grows to 85 or 90%. This is a much different message than, hey, you know what? Most marriages are unhappy. 50% end in divorce, and it doesn't matter whether you're a Christian or not. Quick side note here for anybody that is divorced. The dreadful numbers that you've heard about remarriage or second marriages is also a myth. The percentages of second marriages ending in divorce is not nearly as bad as you have been told. She has an entire chapter dedicated to that in the book. There's a bunch of stuff on that website. I would encourage you to go look at it. Shanti Feldhahn, she said this: I do not believe that divorce is the greatest threat to marriage. I believe discouragement and loss of hope is. See, thinking that most marriages are unhappy and that 50% fail and it doesn't matter whether you're following Christ, that's discouraging. And it can deflate the hope that you have in marriage. You know, there's a couple verses in Romans 8 about hope. And I know it's about faith, this text. But I think it applies to marriage also. It says in Romans 8:24 and 25, for in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Folks, marriage is a wonderful gift from God. Be encouraged, be patient, and have hope. That was the first sort of part of this sermon. I wanted to blow up these myths about marriage. And the second part, I'm aimed at, sort of more extremely practical aspects. And one of them is this. There's an insert in your notes across all of our campuses. It says Marriage Matters on the top of it. This is a 9-week gathering at all of our campuses throughout the year. And the tagline is this: hope for growth, tools for growth, and environments for growth. Whether you are married or engaged, whether your marriage is going well or struggling, I would strongly encourage you that sometime in the next season or two that you sign up for this and go through Marriage Matters. Earlier in most of your services, you heard someone talk about Marriage Matters. And those are just a couple of the hundreds of stories of marriages that have been enhanced, restored, and saved by Marriage Matters. Please, one really practical thing across all campuses that we can do in this area of marriage is jump into Marriage Matters. So what I want to do is I want to give you one really big idea, sort of like think of it as the umbrella, and then 3 things under that I believe you can do in order to trade best marriage for healthy marriage. And again, this is not rocket science. It's just some best practices and where I've landed as I've been studying this for the last 3 or 4 months. So the first big idea of trading best marriage for healthy marriage is simply this. You need to be developing godly character. Your reputation is basically who others think you are. But see, your character is who you really are. So let me just ask you, is your character godly? Do you seek God above all else? Or truth be told, are you on that merry-go-round of best? And when it comes to your character, it does not necessarily align with God's character. Any singles that are in the room, if you want a godly marriage someday, then start living a godly life today. Andy Stanley has a new book out called Love, Sex, and Dating. And I read it recently and listened to some interviews by Andy about it. And it's aimed at folks that are single, engaged, and also if you're married. And he has a quick blurb here that I'll have up on your screens about the book. He says this to open up. We have to become the type of person that the person we're looking for is looking for. Seriously, wait, pause. Just look at this for a second, because that's a sentence that's like got a lot of words in it. But do you get it? We have to become the type of person that the person we're looking for is looking for. He goes on to say, in every other arena of our life, we prepare, but somehow, when it comes to love and romance, there is an assumption that we don't need to prepare, but just commit ourselves, that somehow commitment will trump the needs for preparation. This is not simply a book for people who want to get married. It's for anyone who wants to have successful long-term relationships. I hope the primary takeaway of these teachings is that people should focus on becoming someone instead of finding someone. And if you're only attracting, if you're single, and you're only attracting the wrong type of guy or girl, I will try to say this nicely. Like attracts like. If you want someone that loves God, when you pursue God, you are more likely to attract that type of person. Let me put it another way, a little more blunt. If you don't like the fish you're catching, maybe you need to check the bait you're using. Having a great marriage is not so much about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person. The absolute best thing that you can do for your future marriage or the current marriage you're in is go after godly character. Colossians 3, verse 12, it puts it this way. Lots of scriptures I could have picked here, but I just grabbed this one. Put on then, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another. And if one has a complaint against another, forgive each other, as the Lord has forgiven you. So you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony, and let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body, and be thankful. See, if you are a person of godly character, what this text is saying is you will lead with forgiveness and humility. We need those in our marriages. Right? If you're a person pursuing God's character, you're going to have the character to love your spouse's insecurities away. Because all of us come into a marriage with insecurities, messes. If you have godly character, you are going to be able to love them out of her or him. You know, if you pursue godly character, you're going to be able to be constantly an encourager to people, because you're going to have a deep well to draw on. See, for many years, I have prayed this same prayer day after day, week after week for my daughter's future husbands. And I have prayed it typically, these three simple things, when I've prayed this prayer for them, about the man that they would marry. One, that she would meet a man of godly character. Two, I would pray that this person would treat her with respect and value her. And three, that she would completely adore him. Those were my prayers. Well, on Christmas Eve, my oldest daughter, Alyssa, got engaged. And I can tell you this, that God was faithful. He heard my prayers. She met Matt at church. And after being friends for a short while, he asked her out. Funny story. So he asked her out, and sometime that week before he was going to go out on this date, he had her Facebook page open. And his mom said, "Oh, who's that?" And he said, "Well, this is Alyssa that I'm going out on a date with this week." And she looked at it, and she clicked on a couple of the pictures, and she said, "Well, that's Pastor Scott standing next to Alyssa." And Matt went, "What?" He didn't realize that I was her dad. And her mom says, "If you mess this up, you might get thrown out of that church." So Matt didn't mess it up. So these next three practical points, I heard Pastor Craig Rochelle from Life Church say a couple years ago, and they have always stuck with me because they're simple. And he called these three life-giving keys to marriage. And I have to tell you, I don't do these nearly as well as I should. And I have to tell you this, writing a marriage sermon is brutal. I mean, because I got to get up here and say stuff, and then as I'm praying through this and working through it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm a caveman. So I'm telling you this as someone that's a fellow struggler at this. Just so please know this. This is not me telling you three things that I do perfectly. And these three things, I want to say this about them first. And you've heard me say this line in past sermons. We tend to judge others based on their actions. However, we desire to be judged based on our intentions. Let me just unpack that, right? If someone does something to us that we don't like, we call it out, right? I can't believe you did that to me. I can't believe you said that. We judge other people based on their actions. However, we want to be judged on our intentions. Well, I know that I did that, or I know that, but that's not what I meant. That wasn't my intention, That's not how I wanted it to turn out. I actually wanted to say this or do that. See, what these next three things that I want to share with you have in common is they must be actions, not intentions. If they remain intentions without actions, they will never become life-giving keys to your marriage. So the first one is this. If you think something good, say it. Pretty simple, right? Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." There is life-giving power in the tongue. And if you want a life-giving marriage, then you have to speak life-giving words. When you are criticizing and tearing down your spouse, you are seeping poison into your marriage. So here is my challenge to you. Every single time you think something positive about your spouse, say it. Don't rob them of the blessing. Say it, text it, communicate it. Here's something really simple that you can do from time to time. Instead, because don't we all sometimes just say, getting off the phone, "I love you, honey," leaving in the morning, "I love you, honey." Can I challenge us from time to time? How about saying, "I love you because," and then fill in the blank. "I love you because you're a great mom. I love you because you're such an incredible nurse. I love you because you're willing to go to Haiti and care for kids there." Right? Whenever you don't say something good, by human nature, folks, we start to assume that something's bad. Remember, this has to be an action, not an intention. And my guess is right now, wherever you're participating today at whatever campus, there are at least a few people in the room that are saying this, "Oh, my wife knows. Oh, my husband knows the way I feel about him. I mean, we've been married for so long. He or she, they know. I don't have to say it. Come on, Scott. Can I just be brutally honest with you? If you were thinking that while I was putting this first key out there, who's hurt you in your past? Who's beat you down, insulted you, never expressed love or gratefulness to you? Because you're emulating poor behavior that someone heaped on you, and that's not fair. Your spouse does not deserve that. If you think something good, say it. Second is this: if you think something special, do it. If you think about doing something together, then make it a priority and do it. Do that date night that you were thinking about. Take that walk. Sit on the porch and talk some evening. Take her to her favorite place. If you think something special, do it. Our lives are so chaotic. There is so much going on. When an idea comes to your mind about doing something special with your spouse, particularly in this area of spending time together, then please, please, please do it. Do it. 3 years ago, I had this idea. See, when our kids were little, about every other year, we would go on vacation to Bethany Beach, Delaware. It was affordable because you could drive there. It was really family friendly. We built up incredible memories going there sort of every other year at these different places around Bethany Beach. And it had been many years since we went there, and I had a thought that what about like this September, that just Tina and I would go there. What if I surprise her and say, we're going to go there? One, it'll be cheap, right? It won't be crowded. And we could visit these places where we built these memories from. So I went to VRBO, vacation rental by owner, and I booked it. And it was the best 3 or 4 day getaway that we had in years. I mean, years, folks. We did it again last fall. And we were thinking about doing it again this September, but we have a wedding, and those are expensive, I'm finding out. I mean, you want to talk about sticker shock. I was like, what? So I don't know. Special could mean spending purposeful time together, but could also mean thoughtful acts. If you think about doing something special for your spouse, serving her in some way, fixing something, cleaning something, cooking something, buying her something, do it. It is about an action, not an intention, right? So purposeful time and thoughtful acts, do them. And the third one is this, and this is where I'll sort of land it. If you want something to be different, be it. Craig Rochelle, when he talked about this, he got all fired up, and I still remember it. But it is so simple, right? If you want something to be different, be it. If you want something different in your marriage, if you want something to get better, then you go first. You become the change. You become what's different. If you don't like what you're getting, look at what you're giving. You cannot change your spouse. You can pray for change, right? You can bless them and serve them, but you cannot change them. If you want something to change, be it. See, I don't want the best marriage because that just sounds exhausting. I don't think it's healthy. But please hear me on this. I don't want a normal marriage either. And if you want something different, you cannot do what everybody else does. Seek to become a person of godly character. If you think something good, say it. If you think something special, do it. And if you want something different, be it. Be it. I'm going to close here in a second with a prayer, but I just want to say this. I know there's some folks in here across all of our campuses, and they'd like to maybe come up to me afterwards and say, yeah, but. Yeah, but Scott, you don't know my situation. I get that. And that's why we do sermons like, Where Are You, God? Or what do you do with when God doesn't seem to be answering your pain? This was more of just a marriage talk. Can I encourage you, though? We have elders up front after all of our services at all of our campuses. If you've got a yeah, but, come up front. And please get some prayer for that. So across all campuses, will you stand up? I'm going to let your campus pastor or leader close you out there.